Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the top side deck options you guys have for September 2021. I did want to wait until we got the first tournament of the post E-Ban format to try and give you guys some advice on side deck cards. We have that now, so we know what's relatively popular, but I do expect the meta to keep changing, fluctuating, and figuring itself out. I don't expect these particular top decks to remain on top, but the good thing is a lot of these side deck cards will be applicable to a lot of different meta changes. If new strategies come in, a lot of these cards will still be really good, so it should be useful for the rest of the month. That being said, guys, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. If you guys want to help support the channel, there are many ways to do so down in the description, particularly today, guys. If you want to buy or pre-order any of the cards you see in today's video, or buy any trading card game cards for that matter, use my link in the description to TCG Player. It really does help the channel a lot, and it's greatly appreciated. With that being said, we'll get into our first card. We'll start with more generic stuff that just about any deck can sideboard, and then we'll get into a little bit more specific things for each different color. So firstly, Jin Survival of the Fittest. It's no surprise that Android 17 Turning the Tide is one of the cornerstones of the format. Second place at the core event was an SS4 Vegeta ramp deck that obviously played Super 17 Turning the Tide. So Jin Survival of the Fittest is going to be really good in the majority of your decks. Now, I think if you're playing an aggro deck that can consistently win the game far before 7 energy come down, you probably don't need to worry about siding this card, but most decks in the format appear to be mid-range or control. And in those types of decks, you're absolutely going to want to be sideboarding Jin Survival of the Fittest just to counteract those Android 17 Turning the Tides. And who knows, maybe there's some other random boss monsters that this card could be useful against, and by having your sideboard's pretty good. If you're playing a black deck, you can even get away with side or main boarding one copy of this and sideboarding another copy, but in the sideboard probably don't need more than 2, just because it's such a late game answer card. With the way you draw in Dragon Ball Super, 2 is probably all you really need. Then we have Shrouded and Mystery. So we actually saw a lot of mill decks in the top 16 of the core event. So between the mill decks, between decks like Hachiyak, which didn't really top this past event, but we know they're relatively popular in the format because of SS4 Gogeta thwarting the Dark Empire. So between that type of deck, between mill, between just your general long game types of decks, Shrouded and Mystery seems like a really good card in the sideboard that can just help you clean up a lot of those longer games. You just have to make sure that you can pretty much get a 10 card drop area by turn 6, or whenever you want to use Shrouded and Mystery. Some decks, if there's like not a lot going on in the game, not a lot of back and forth, not a lot of attacking, it can be a little bit tough to build up that drop area. So you just want to make sure you're going to be able to actually fuel the Shrouded and Mystery. And I will say, if you're going to use this against blue, which blue is one of those long game type of decks, you have to make sure you can either bait out the Godsling Technique Trunks with something else, or make sure you can clear their Unison, or make sure they've gone through all the copies of Godsling. This can be a bit of a volatile card against blue, but again, if you can deal the Unison, make sure they go through all their God Sealings, stuff like that. This is going to be a very, very safe card against blue. But other matchups like, again, Hachiyak, Mill Janemba, Mill Cooler, which both have pretty much no answer to this card, which is nice. Any other types of long, like yellow decks, like Sinchenron, like Hellboy, stuff like that, you know the game is going to go long. Shrouded Mystery can be an absolutely excellent card. Then we have Makikabora, the Broken Seal. So I haven't recommended this card in quite some time because the format just went to a place where it wasn't very linear, and to be fair, it was also much more aggressive. So paying 2 for a Makikabora definitely felt a lot more expensive than it feels now. And I wouldn't even say now we're in like a super linear format, but there are a lot of staple-ish boss monsters that you can call with this. Again, Android 17 Turning the Tide, SS4 Gogeta thwarting the Dark Empire, even like Piccolo Jr. Eradicator of Peace against certain rogue red-green decks. There are their fair share of boss monsters you can call with Makikabora, and that's actually another good thing. This can actually be a dual usage sideboard card. Let's say you're playing, I don't know, Soul Striker, for instance. You sideboard Jin Survival of the Fittest, you sideboard Makikabora Broken Seal. If you're afraid of turning the tide on like maybe back-to-back turns, you can hit him with the Makikabora. Then on the next turn, if they want to cast it, you can still hit him with the Jiren. Just things like that, where like Makikabora can come in and fill that like supplementary sideboard role on top of like the random rogue boss cards you might come across, like Green Gotenks, for example. There's been a lot of talk in the community about Green Gotenks, so Makikabora can do work against that. There's a lot of reach that Makikabora has now that the format has slowed down, because a lot of these like boss monster-esque type decks generally revolve around a specific character. Even against like Gogeta Zeno, if you just call Gogeta Zeno 6-drop against them, it's going to be very hard for them to kill you that turn, because that's where most of their power comes from, being able to play their different fusions. And if they can't get their fusions on the board, they can't really put out that pressure they want to put out. So this is a really, really good sideboard option for that reason. Then we have Super Kamehameha. So this basically represents all the different one-drop counterplays you have. So you have Super Kamehameha, you have Absolute Release Ball, you have Focus Breakthrough, you have Beerus Ball. The yellow one is not that great. So in that place, instead of playing Super Galagun, play Tyrannical Blow. That is a really good sideboard card as well. But basically, these things are great for stopping Floodgate type cards like Topo, like Majin Buu, Unadulterated Malice, which even though it is only a counter attack skill and no auto, it is still contingent on being played to the field in order to resolve the rest of the effects. So if you counterplay it, you're effectively in good shape. And they have other applications as well, again, like a Rogue, Piccolo Jr. Eradicator of Peace, stuff like that. Cards are just very, very versatile and very, very good. Then we have Deborah Ritual at hand. So hand control wasn't too crazy in the core event. There wasn't really any that topped the event, but with the amount of mill and blue and just slower strategies, I do think hand control can swoop in and kind of start eating those decks alive. So you might want to be prepared with your Deborah Ritual at hands to try and counteract, especially like Cell Surge, maybe OG Green Broly, maybe TN, maybe certain hand control variants of Boo and Videl. But I do think Cell Surge is going to be the #1 thing you're going to want to look out for when it comes to hand control. So be prepared with that, whether it's Deborah on the sideboard, whether it's Sand Instincts in the main or sideboard, stuff like that. Then we have Son Gohan Chaining History, again representing all the different colors of the same type of card, the Draft Box 6 Silver Bullets. This is actually much more effective now against Blue Baby than it has been in the past, and it can just be good against, like, you know, Soul Striker, Vegeta Ramp, like anything that's just using Dimension Magic, but especially Blue Baby, because if they have a board, so if they use like a Gohan Baby's minion, they're not going to be able to use their counterattacks to untap as easily, since the field card now puts a restriction on them for having a battle card in play. So this type of card puts a lot more pressure on Blue Baby than it did in the past. And again, it can just be decent against Soul Striker, Vegeta Ramp, any other random blue deck you might come across. Then we have Vegito Unison of Might. So this is just a really good sideboard unison for most red decks because of that -2 until the end of your opponent's next turn. If your opponent would play a battle card using a skill, it's placed in the drop area instead. This card's been a solid red staple for quite some time. Red has obviously fallen down the ranks quite considerably in terms of its position in the meta, but it's still a really good card. Like blue with Galactic Buster playing a ton of battle cards by skills. Our rival decks playing battle cards by skills. A lot of yellow decks like Raiders Warcry playing a battle card by a skill. It just really, really good effect. Most decks aren't like hard casting cards on curve, so using a -2 on this thing can shore up quite a few matchups. Then we have Giant Ball. If you're in yellow, please sideboard this card. If not, main deck this card. It's just such a versatile card, and there are so many good dual attackers in the format, the main one being Bardock fighting against Fates, where Giant Ball just acts as a better negate. Like if you wanted to stop a full dual or triple attacker, you'd have to use Time Magic, for example, but Giant Ball does the same thing as long as it doesn't have Deflector Barrier, and it gets to draw you a card, and most of them do not have Deflector Barrier. So this thing is just super, super solid. In my yellow decks, for example, I'm always trying to main deck 2 copies and side a third, but I can definitely see just siding 2 or maining 1, siding 2, or siding 3 overall. I think it's just an incredibly good side deck yellow card right now. Definitely consider it if you're playing yellow. And then we have Zeno Cosmic Unison. So this one's a little bit weird because most blue decks have a unison they want to establish as early as possible, but the -5 is actually a really, really good answer to field card based strategies, namely King Cold, which just won the core event over the weekend. And we saw that the SS4 Vegeta player was main decking Tragedy Overground. There are even variants of SS4 Vegeta that play the entire Zamasu engine just to put Tragedy Overground on the field as early as turn 4, maybe even a little earlier than that, depending on how they are able to ramp. So if you're in a blue deck, you might want to play Zeno Cosmic Unison. The -5 can be very, very clutch. Again, it is a bit awkward if you already have unisons you want to establish, so you'll want to time this pretty properly. Like, you'll want to make sure the following turn that you won't really need a Godsling Technique Trunks to counterplay. You're going to hope that this sets them back far enough to where you can manage without it. And on the following turn, you're going to want to be able to probably reestablish a unison just to get like your draw engine going again, to get your Godsling Technique going again, stuff like that. But I think it can be a very, very good side deck card. And then, guys, we have Blue Impulse. So again, if you're playing green, which green's a lot better nowadays than it has been in more recent times of the Unison Warrior block, This card is just super good for your opponent playing battle cards during your turn. So again, like arrival decks, like topo decks, like green Unadulterated Malice Majin Buu decks. Keep in mind, they only have to play one battle card on your turn, and then you get to wipe your opponent's board as long as they don't have barriers. So this can be a super strong card for green decks coming out of the sideboard in this type of format. But that is going to wrap it up today, guys. I hope you found something useful and helpful in this video. If you did, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.